Hello and welcome to another episode of the Spaghetti Westerns podcast. This is season 4, episode 14, number 99. This will probably be as close as we can get to a peplum or sword and sandal episode. We're going to talk about the lost treasure of the Aztecs and our history of the Spaghetti Western. Our whatever became of is Gordon Mitchell. Who are those guys will be Alan Steele. Film of the week will be Born to Kill. We've got an autograph of the week. We've got a book of the week, CD of the week, and then we'll wrap things up with the weekly news. So let's get into it. History of the Spaghetti Westerns. We're going to talk about the lost treasure of the Aztecs. This was a 1964 Italian, West German, French co-production. The Italian title was Sansone y el Tesoro degli Incas. The German title was Samson und der Schatz der Incas, also Der Schatz der Incas. The French title was Samson et le Trésor des Incas. And a couple of the USA and English titles were Hercules and the Treasure of the Incas, The Arizona Kid, known to most of us as The Lost Treasure of the Aztecs. The director was Piero Pirati. Story was by Pirati. Screenplay was by Pirati and Arpad de Rizzo. Cinematography was by Augusto Tiezzi. It's an Eastman color and total scope. The music was by Angelo Francesco Lavagnino, and it runs 93 minutes. Main cast members are Jerry Damon or Darman was played by Mario Petri. Alan Fox or Smith was played by Tony Saylor. Samson or William Arizona Smith was played by Alan Steele. Princess Mycia or Inca was played by Anna Maria Polani. And Janet or Jenny Nixon was played by Brigitte Heiberg. A couple of the other more familiar names that you'll recognize are El Puma was played by Wolfgang Glucksky of Fistful of Dollars fame. Ilona was played by Dada Galati. And Tex played by Rick Boyd. The story goes Alan Fox, played by Tony Saylor, is accused of killing Old Man Nixon, played by Carlo Tamburlani, the father of Janet, played by Brigitte Heiberg. He is taken to Silver City for trial. During the journey, the coach is attacked by a group of bandits led by the real murderer, Jerry Damon. Samson, played by Alan Steele, an old friend of Alan, believing him dead, has vowed to avenge him. Meanwhile, Damon, after the assault, decides to steal the fabled treasure of the lost Aztecs, guarded, according to legend, somewhere in the mountains. After having again attempted to kill Alan, Jerry is chased by Samson and his comrades, trying to eliminate the band of outlaws. In turn, Samson, Alan, and his companions are captured by the Aztecs and are to be sacrificed. The Queen of the Aztecs, Mycia, played by Anna Maria Polani, falls in love with Alan and tries to help him escape, but the high priest condemns her to also be sacrificed. The situation is resolved by Samson, who, with his strength, causes the collapse of the temple. Mycia escapes with Alan, who will become his wife, and Janet marries Samson. Okay, an overview of the film. The story that originally this was to be a peplum sword and sandal film, but with the sudden success of the spaghetti western genre, producer Fortunato Messino demanded the script be quickly rewritten to make it a western. To make it more attractive to the movie-going public is pure bunk, as the film was released 3 weeks after Fistful of Dollars, so there's no way that they could have had time to rewrite, film, and edit the film. It was made to be a western like the German westerns, and Steele was used, and his character based on his recognition as a sword and sandal star. Most copies are cut with such scenes as two cowboys talking about women, and one states, "I can smell a woman 10 miles away." The East German television version was also changed, and the soundtrack are added from archived tracks. The use of well-known and famous athletes, in this case Olympic champion Tony Saylor, is as old as the hills. These people were used for name recognition and to bring in possible non-film goers who were intrigued by names they knew in other venues. This film is available on German, Italian, and Spanish DVD. You can check the Spaghetti Western Film Database for more information on the releases. In actor profiles, we have Jerry Damon or Darman, played by Mario Petri. Mario Giancarlo Landini Pizzetto was born in Perugia, Italy on January 21st, 1922, and began his career after World War II, making his stage debut in 1947 at the Teatro alla Scala in Milan, where he sang the following year in the role of Creonte in the premiere of Stravinsky's Oedipus Rex. He sang relatively little outside of Europe, though he made a few guest appearances in Dallas, Texas in 1965. From 1960 to 1965, he appeared in 20 motion pictures, mostly in the sword and sandal genre. Petri was married to ballerina Letta Rivarolo from 1954 to 1985 and is the father of author-writer Romano Pizzetto and painter David Pizzetto. He died at Città della Pieve on January 26, 1985. He was 63. His only other Western was 1963's Duel at the Rio Grande with Sean Flynn. Alan Fox, or Smith, was played by Tony Saylor. Anton Engelbert Tony Saylor was born in Kitzbühel, Tyrol, Austria on November 17, 1935. Tony was an Austrian alpine ski racer, considered among the best in the sport. At age 20, he won all 3 gold medals in alpine skiing at the 1956 Winter Olympics. He nearly duplicated the feat at the 1958 World Championships with 2 golds and a silver. He also won world titles both years. Saylor was nicknamed the Blitz from Kitz. He was named Austrian Sports Personality of the Year in 1956, 57, and 58, and Austrian Sports Personality of the Century in 1999. Saylor was married twice and had 1 child, a son named Florian. He died of cancer of the larynx on August 24, 2009, at the age of 73. Saylor was also a singer, releasing 18 records. He appeared in some 28 films and TV appearances, with Lost Treasure of the Aztecs his lone Western. We'll cover Alan Steele in a few minutes. Princess Mycia Inca was played by Anna Maria Polani. Anna Maria Polani was born in Italy on November 24, 1947, in Bologna, Emilia-Romagna, Italy. In her short film career, she appeared in 11 films from 1964 to 68, sometimes billed as Ann Sherman, A-N-N, and Ann Sherman, A-N-N-E. She appeared in 1 other spaghetti western, In a Cult's Shadow, in 1965. After 1968, she disappears and her whereabouts remain unknown. And last but not least, we have Janet or Jenny Nixon, played by Brigitte Heiberg, another little-known actress. She's British-born, who appeared in only 4 films from 1964 to 1969. She was a 1961 runner-up in the Miss Denmark beauty pageant and first runner-up in 1962's Miss Europe contest. She is also a former model. That's all we know about it. I do have a quick copy of the American poster under Lost Treasure of the Aztecs, and it reads, "A mummy's curse reaches out from the grave to bring untold horror upon those who would loot the fabulous Aztec treasure." So that's some of the AdMat format that they released in the Americans. Okay, let's move along to our whatever became of Gordon Mitchell. We'll spend a few minutes with Gordon because he's got a prolific career. Okay, Gordon Mitchell was born Charles Allen Pendleton in Denver, Colorado on July 29, 1923. After his parents divorced, he moved to Inglewood, California with his mother. There he grew up in a tough neighborhood, so he began working out to deal with his tough companions. During World War II, he served in the U.S. Army in the Battle of the Bulge, where he was taken a prisoner of war. He later obtained a degree at the University of Southern California under the GI Bill. He then became a high school teacher and guidance counselor in Los Angeles, where, due to his physique, he was given classes containing many juvenile delinquent students. Following a return enlistment for the Korean War, where he rose to the rank of major, he found film extra work in movies such as Prisoner of War, The Man with the Golden Arm, and Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments. Look for him and his friend Joe Gold when they dragged Charlton Heston's Moses to the Pharaoh Yul Brynner. Mae West then chose him to appear in her Las Vegas nightclub act as part of her buffed all-male chorus line. Other members were Mickey Hargitay and Dan Vadas. Shortly after the success of Steve Reeves, he contacted to come to Italy after he was sent a photo to an Italian producer who signed him to a contract. Prior to going to Italy, he saw a clairvoyant who asked him if he had ever been known by the name of Gordon Mitchell. He replied no, but on arrival in Rome, Mitchell was given this very name as a stage name. He first found work in sword and sandal films such as Sinbad Against the Seven Saracens, Spartacus, Seven Slaves Against the World, and Treasure of the Petrified Forest. After the sword and sandal films started to fade, he slimmed down and easily found work in the spaghetti western genre, sweeping Europe. Here he went on to appear mainly as villain in such roles as Beyond the Law, Savage Guns, and John the Bastard. As a side note, Mitchell also appeared in Fellini's Satricone 1969, directed by Federico Fellini. In all, Gordon appeared in 39 spaghetti westerns. During his stay in Italy, he appeared in a film and was not paid, but instead was given 7 acres of land 25 miles south of Rome. Here he built mainly by himself an entire shanty town and soundstage. His town was seen mainly in B spaghetti films, especially those used by Gianni Crea and Demofilo Fadani. He often appeared in small roles and cameo appearances because he lived on the lot and was always available to fill a role if needed. Gordon called the location Cave Studios, that's C-A-V-E, and lost the land in a court case when he returned to the United States when the court ruled foreigners could not own land in Italy. When Bill Connolly and I interviewed Gordon on April 1st, 1990, he said that he had slimmed down after his Peplum films so he could more easily become a regular in the spaghetti western genre. When we asked him about his appearance in porno erotic western, he looked at us like he had never been asked about the film before and denied even knowing anything about it. Upon further research, Bill and I found his scene was 2 quick shots of him standing outside the Cave Church and were lifted from a previous film. From the early 1970s onwards, he started to diversify into everything from horror films such as Frankenstein's Castle of Freaks, Nazi exploitation, Achtung, the Desert Tigers, French criminal comedy, The Umbrella Coup, and post-apocalyptic films Endgame. He also appeared in the bizarre 1982 Israeli adaptation of H. Rider Haggard's She as Hector. Mitchell was close friends with fellow American expatriate actors Mickey Hargitay, Richard Harrison, Dan Vadas, and John Delaney. Like Harrison and Delaney, Mitchell acted in low-budget action films in the Philippines during the 1980s, having roles in Commando Invasion and SFX Retaliator for director John Gale. Gordon returned to the United States in 1989 and retired from acting, but kept making occasional film appearances while running the World Gym in Santa Monica, California, and later in Marina del Rey until his death during the early morning hours of September 20th, 2003, from an apparent heart attack at the age of 80. Bill Connolly and myself became personal friends with Gordon in his last years of his life, and he'd call me every few weeks, usually on a weekend morning, and we discuss his career and his plans for future projects. He became a minister at this time and ran his own church. I was lucky to spend a weekend with him and Mickey Hargitay at a film festival in Laughlin, Nevada, in late 1999. In closing, I'd like to say, like most film villains, Gordon was the complete opposite of his film persona. He was always personable, down to earth, kind, and respectful. When we would interview him every once in a while, he would turn his head and you'd catch that villainous look, but most of the time he was smiling and happy go lucky. You can see Gordon Mitchell in a flashback scene in Leonardo DiCaprio with Leonardo DiCaprio as Rick Dalton in 2019's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Look for Gordon chasing Rick Dalton in Operation Dynamite in the bridge scene. Here's a quick poster, fake poster that they came up, and you can see Gordon listed in the credits. That's probably his last film appearance. I'll list his total spaghetti western film appearances after the podcast. I've also got a quick picture here of his design for Cave Studios film set and his credentials from the Department of Building that allowed him to build the studio himself. The only help he had was in concrete installation and some plumbing. Okay, let's move along and we'll talk about Alan Steele and who are those guys. Okay, Alan Steele. Alan Steele was born Sergio Ciani on September 7, 1935 in Rome, Lazio, Italy. Ciani started his career as a stuntman before he became the body double for Steve Reeves in Hercules Unchained and in The Giant of Marathon, in which he also played a minor role. In the early 1960s, he adopted the stage name Alan Steele and starred in leading roles in a number of Peplum films with good commercial success. He had the distinction as being one of the very few native Italians to play the heroes of the Peplum features. In addition to playing roles named either Hercules, Ursus, or Samson, he played Robin Hood in the 1976 adventure film Storia di Arcieri Pugni e Occhi Neri, story of arrow, fist, and black eyes. It's not surprising to find Steele cast as a heavy during his prime, as well as the menacing villain to very heroes he was prone to play, such as his crazed emperor Commodus in Rebel Gladiators 1962, Ursus the Rebel Gladiator, opposite Dan Vadas. He also played the supporting role of Caldos in The Fury of Hercules 1962 when it was Brad Harris's turn to play the title role. By the 1960s, the sword and sandal phase had faded away and Steele went on, unlike others, Peplum stars, to other film styles in dramas, thrillers, horror westerns, even comedies. In the late 60s, he and fellow movie muscle man Kurt Morris and Gordon Mitchell served up a spaghetti western entitled Sapevano Solo Uccidere, 1968, also called Saguaro. In 1979, he ended his on-camera appearances with the Italian comedy Baby Love. In all, Alan Steele went on to appear in over 25 films, among which were 4 Europe westerns, Lost Treasure of the Aztecs in '64, Saguaro in '68, Fast Hand to Steal My Name, and Cowboy Kid, both in '73. Steele was to also appear in a sequel to his story of Arrow, Fist, and Black Eyes called Spaghetti Western e Karate, but it was never made. Most likely this was the latter made 1973 film Karate Fists and Beans with Dean Reed. Ciani died in his sleep at his house in Ostia, Rome at the age of 79 on September 5, 2015, just 2 days short of what would have been his 80th birthday. I'll post his spaghetti western credits after the podcast also. Okay, let's move on to the film of the week. Okay, I picked this one because it's one of Gordon Mitchell's few starring roles as a hero instead of a villain. It's Born to Kill. It's a 1967 Italian film production. The Italian title is Nato per Uccidere, also called Django Nato per Uccidere. English title Kill or Be Killed in Born to Kill. Producer, director, story, and screenplay was by Tony Mulligan, who's Antonio Malika, and this marks his directorial debut. Cinematography was by Oberdon Troiani. It's in Technicolor and Technoscope. Music is by Felice Di Stefano, and it runs 100 minutes. Cast is Rod Gordon, played by Gordon Mitchell. Laurie or Flory Waldmore, played by Femi Benusi. Dodge or Dudgett, played by Aldo Berti. Mr. Tyson is played by Tom Pileggi. And John Storm is played by Franco Gula. Okay, the story is a gunfighter gambler Rod Gordon, played by Gordon Mitchell, gets involved with a ruthless town boss or land baron named Tyson, played by Tom Pileggi. When Gordon wins a large sum of money in a poker game with Dodge, played by Aldo Berti, he tries to get the money back by force along with several of his henchmen. Gordon reacts by killing a dozen of Dodge's men. Eventually, they kidnap a saloon girl and try to take control of the entire area, including the town of Tree Crossing, for their own personal gain. After seeing a small ranch owned by Flory Waldemar, played by Femi Benusi, almost burned to the ground, Gordon decides he'll take sides and joins the townspeople in fighting the crooked land baron and Dodge. And after being captured and beaten, he finally faces Dodge in a showdown while Tyson manages to escape. For his heroism, Gordon is named the sheriff and marries Flory. In a film review, this is one of the few spaghettis where Mitchell gets to play the good guy, but he's as much an anti-hero as any other spaghetti star. There's a nice opening sequence in the credits with a combination of partial rotoscope and partial black and white drawings. Very unique. Very good score by Felice De Stefano adds to the enjoyment. A couple of questions, though, arise, such as Berti has several chances to kill Mitchell during the film but doesn't, so what's that all about? A lot of violence and gunplay, but little blood. Always ask myself, why wasn't Mitchell used as an anti-hero more often? And he has the look and temperament to be as ruthless as any villain of the genre. This is available on Italian DVD, so see the Spaghetti Western database for additional info. You can also find it in English on YouTube. Okay, in actor profiles, we have Rod Gordon, played by Gordon Mitchell, played by real name Charles Pendleton, born in 23, died in 2003. We just covered him. Laurie or Flory Waldemar was played by Femi Benusi. Eufemio Benusi was born on March 4, 1945, in Rovigno, Italy, which is now Croatia. She was a model before debuting on stage at the Teatro del Popolo of Rijeka, then moved to Rome and made her film debut in Piero Pasolini's 1966 Hawks and Sparrows under the stage name of Femi Martin. Benusi was mainly active in genre films, such as in the 70s she became a star of the sex comedies subgenre. Benusi appeared in 87 films from 1965 to 1983, among which were 11 spaghetti westerns. She retired from films in the early 1980s. Then we have Dodge or Dudgett, played by Aldo Berti. Very interesting actor. Aldo Berti was born in San Clemente, Florence, Tuscany, Italy on February 29, 1936. One of the most familiar faces of the genre, sometimes under the pseudonyms Steve St. Clair and Richard McMore. He was a poet, an author, and a film actor. Aldo lived a nomadic life, traveling all over the world after giving up his film career. He was friends with William Berger, and he had a romantic relationship with actress Barbara Steele, after which he almost committed suicide. He became a poet and wrote a book of poems entitled Canto Finale. On February 4, 1984, while traveling up the Nile with a load of patients for Juba and the first Doctors Without Borders camp, they were attacked by armed men with machine guns and grenades. Hundreds died, and Aldo's spirit died with them. From that point on, he lived a personal life of shame for not dying with them. For many years, he lived a simple life in Morocco. He was diagnosed with brain cancer in October 2010 and returned to Florence to face death. He died on December 26, 2010. He is quoted as saying, "To be born is the privilege of all, having lived a privileged of few." Some of Aldo's best known westerns were A Stranger in Sacramento in 1965, A Stranger in Town in 66, The Dirty Outlaw 67, Once Upon a Time in the West in 68, and El Puro in 1969. Then we have Mr. Tyson, played by Tom Pileggi. Tamas Pileggi was born in Budapest, Hungary on November 26, 1921. He was a producer, director, theater, film, TV, and voice actor. Pileggi fled Hungary in 1956 after the Soviet takeover with fellow actor John Bartha and wife Leanne Gehr, and ended up in Italy via Austria. He would go on to appear in over 230 films from 1958 to 1994, 34 of which were spaghetti westerns. He usually played military officers, town officials, bankers, ranchers, and lawmen. Pileggi was married to actress Leonau Gehr from 1959 until her death in 1990. He's the father of 2 children, and as far as we know, he's still living at the age of 100. Some of his best known Western roles were as Mr. Miller in The Big Gun Down, 1966, as Will in The Man from Nowhere, aka Arizona Colt, in also 66, Mac in Blackjack, 68, Pinkerton in Gatling Gun in 68, and as a doctor in Buddy Goes West in 1981. Last but not least, we have John Storm, who was played by Franco Gula. Francesco Gula was born in Italy sometime in the late 1800s or very early 1900s. Cannot find a birth date for him. He was a theater director, actor, and singer. He appeared in nearly 50 films from 1963 to 1972, among which were 38 spaghetti westerns. He's often confused with Franco Pesci, another longtime actor which we can find no information. He's probably best remembered as the old man in the saloon in Today We Killed, Tomorrow We Die in 1968. Okay, let's move on to Autograph of the Week. Okay, Autograph of the Week. We have James Garner. James Garner was in A Man Called Sledge. So that's my autograph of the week. I got that from the Don Bruce collection. Okay, let's move on to Book of the Week. Hey, it's Sergio Leone, Backstage of a Genius. And this is photography by Dino Jarrock, also text and interviews. It's in English and Italian. Basically, a lot of pictures with some short interviews and quotations. Came out in Italy. I don't think there's a date on this one. 2018, and it's by Daniel Clemente Jarrock Editore out of Milan. And there's no pages listed on this one, so I can't tell you, but it's over 100, that's for sure. Okay, now let's move on to CD of the week. Okay, CD of the week is my Delicious Spaghetti Westerns. This was the first one, is followed up by another set, various different composers, Demasi, Morricone, Nicolai. It came out in 2006, and it's still available. Pretty pricey. It's probably over 50 bucks. Recommended though for you guys who collect composers, instead of just individual soundtracks, but ones that are compilations. You can still find it, and it's well recommended. Okay, let's have a couple of posters. I've got one of Treasure. Forgot we've got that intro. Belgian poster for Treasure of the Aztecs, and this one looks more like a Western. And then I have the German, which is a combination of course, Western, and of course he's got to take his shirt off, and this looks a little bit more peplamy. But that's our two posters of the week, and now we'll turn to the weekly news. Okay, weekly news, we have some DVD releases. First one is a new German Blu-ray DVD of Adios Compañeros. We also know it as A Coffin Full of Dollars. Directed by Demofilo Fadani, stars Gordon Mitchell, Klaus Kinski, Jeff Cameron, Ray Saunders, and our friend Simonetta Vitelli. Was released on September 9th by True Grit / Cargo Records. It contains 2 discs with 2 optional covers featuring alternate German titles of the film, and it's in German and Italian with German subtitles. Extras include a slipcase, a leaflet, and it's a limited release of 500 copies. Next, we have another German Blu-ray DVD release, also by True Grit and Cargo Records, released on September 9th. And it's Fast Hand der Schnellst Colt von Death Valley, which is Fast Hand is Still My Name, directed by Mario Bianchi and starring William Berger, Alan Steele, Frank Brana, Fernando Bilbao, Gil Roland. It's in German and Italian with German subtitles and a running time of 85 minutes. Extras include a slipcase and a leaflet. And last but not least is yet another German DVD release by Charlie Video, this time on September 16th, of Pulverdamp in Casa Grande, which is Gunfighters of Casa Grande. That's coming up. But they also released this week a DVD of Django, which I have very little information about. There's only 22 of these released in a box set. So you'll have to contact the Spaghetti Western database to see if they've got any information. But what I have, I got off of their database. So unless Seb's got some more information in the last week, this is a mystery. I couldn't find anything on their database about it at all. We do have one rest in peace, and this is a bit of trivia basically, but we have the death of Queen Elizabeth II. She was born Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor in Mayfair, London on April 21st, 1926. She was the Queen of the United Kingdom and of 14 other sovereign countries from February 6, 1952 until her death this week. Her reign of 70 years and 7 months is the longest of any British monarch. She died on September 8th at Balmoral Castle, Scotland, England. You wonder why I list her? She was actually herself in archival footage in the 1999 British Canadian Western Grey Eagle, starring our friend Pierce Brosnan. So look for her in archive footage in that film. Before we go, I want to give a shout out to Bill Connolly for his help on the Gordon Mitchell episode. And until next time, next week will be our 100th episode and the end of season 5. Jay will be back, and so Courtney Joyner to discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the entire program will feature the good, the bad, and the ugly. Till then, see you next week. This has been a Roberto Genizzi production, and until then, adios, amigos.